conspiracy is not conspired. It's true. So everything they said in the report, it's a 500 plus pages report.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
most conspiracy theories are about maybe 6 months away from becoming conspiracy facts. And
exactly.
so that's what you have here. You have even longer where they said that, oh, the virus, it was engineered, it was gain of function.
hmm
Fauci did it. He gave money to the Chinese to research it to make the virus more dangerous, more potent.
hmm
And oh no, that's evil. He wouldn't have done that. Well, that's what he
hmm
did. So
hmm
so now
Exactly.
we'll see where they go with that after that, especially after the election and the dust settles,
hmm
uh, where they want to go with that kind of information.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, we can start. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is December 3rd. Here is our dear friend, Tom. Tom, so nice to see you again.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. And then for this week, we have so many good news. Some are not that good, some are really good news. So we'll discuss with Tom today. Before we start, I like to introduce Tom to our audience. And he worked in FBI for almost 30 years. And for 5 years, he worked as assistant director of FBI. He's now retired. And again, thank you, Tom, for coming to our broadcast.
Thank you.
Sure. So let's go with the good news first. The FBI director, finally, the name is on, um, Kash Patel. So I
Right.
remember we discussed about this person, this gentleman, last week. So do you think he's a very good pick?
I think he's very good. Very, very good.
Great.
Uh, you hear Democrats, oh, he has no experience. He's not
Uh,
qualified.
they always.
They just can't stop lying and making
Mhm,
up stuff. If you don't like him because he's a conservative or something
mhm,
like that, okay. But
mhm,
making up stories that he's only going to do what Trump wants him to do and all of that, I don't
mhm,
believe that. Uh,
mhm.
this is someone, his parents were immigrants from India. Uh,
Right.
he was born in New York.
Mhm,
And when he first became a lawyer, he was a public defender of all
right.
things,
Mhm,
defending criminals in court. Then
mhm.
later, he became a prosecutor in the Department of Justice. And, it's reported that he personally prosecuted over 60 federal cases as a prosecutor, a
Mhm,
courtroom prosecutor, um, individuals linked to terrorist groups and other
mhm,
organized crime groups.
mhm,
Um, then later he becomes uh, an assistant, let's say, to Devin Nunes, who is a member of Congress at the time.
mhm,
And, so he goes on in that, and they basically uncover, and Patel writes the memo
mhm.
documenting this whole Russia Gate
Right.
nonsense, which was all false allegations against Trump, and that the Russians rigged the last election and all of that, none of which was true. And so, he was familiar with that. So
Mhm,
here he goes from being a Department of Justice prosecutor
mhm,
to uh, a member of a congressional committee, let's say, investigating these things. Then he goes on to be an assistant to the Secretary of Defense in the
mhm.
Pentagon. And so he has a wide-ranging background concerning
Right.
federal law, federal prosecutions,
Mhm,
and yeah, he's a patriot.
mhm,
And so right away the Democrats, he'll just do whatever Trump wants him to do, and he'll be loyal to Trump, and
mhm,
all of these things that they might make up again, which
mhm,
tells me they're scared to death of him. They
mhm,
know he's going to be tenacious and competent. He's not an idiot. He's
mhm,
going to be very, very qualified, if you will. And
mhm.
and a qualified director of the FBI is going to scare people who
Right.
aren't patriots, who are
Right.
trying to undermine the system or be corrupt or all these other things that we've seen. And particularly, a major part of the corruption we've seen is out of the Democratic Party. And
Mhm,
so these are the people that are speaking out against him.
mhm,
Oh, he's no good. So all I would say to that is they'll have their hearings and they'll be able to, when his nomination officially goes to the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, and they'll have the time to be able to ask every question they want to ask and
Mhm.
smear him anyway, which they're going to,
Mhm.
every way that they can. And so we'll
Right.
see with that. But the way that'll work is the committee will then vote whether they're going to recommend the nomination to the whole Senate, for the
Mhm.
senators to vote in favor of him being director of the FBI. And then even if the committee thinks he shouldn't be, it
Yeah.
still goes to the Senate and the Senate can overrule it. So the
Uh,
entire Senate will have the opportunity at the end of the hearings to
mhm.
decide if they're going to
Mhm.
pass for him to be director or not.
Right, right. Well, he remind me another great gentleman, Matt Gates, who has to quit for the DOJ, the director of DOJ. So, a secretary of DOJ. So, what do you think about his future of the nominee?
Matt
Uh,
Gaetz,
Not Matt Gates, the Cash.
I
Does
think
something happen or no?
I think ultimately he'll be confirmed.
Okay.
But the fact that you have people, I've heard former FBI executives being interviewed on some of the liberal channels. Oh, he'll be a disaster. He's no good. He's not qualified. We don't want him.
Mhm.
Well, consider the source of who's criticizing him
Right.
and what they're claiming are his faults.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so to me, they're scared of him.
Yeah, right. So you think you have confidence that he will pass the Senate and get into the position that he deserved.
I believe so.
Great.
Now, meantime, the investigators for the Democratic Party, that they'll be trying to either find something really terrible or
Hmm.
make it up. That who knows? I don't want to go into what they could come up with, but it'll be something. It may involve some, sex with children or
Something.
corruption or some other nonsense uh, that who knows what? They'll come up with something.
Yeah, right. So we'll see. But I think he's very strong. He's patriotic and he knows what he's doing.
I think
And
so.
yeah, so that's so good. Then the next question I'd like to hear your view is when he get into FBI, what do you think he gonna do for the first three important things that if he go to FBI as a director?
I think that he's talked about trying to move headquarters out of Washington and,
Hmm.
put it somewhere else in the country. Many people have proposed that in the past.
Hmm.
Um, we'll see. That he's going to, some of the executive positions are
Hmm.
more or less appointed positions in the high-ranking positions. So he's going to have, he's going to have a difficult time
Hmm.
just picking out people and trying to weed out FBI headquarters and some of the people that are there
Hmm.
that have brought so much negative publicity to the FBI,
Hmm.
and a lot of it having to do with Christopher Wray
Hmm.
being just a complete liar.
Hmm.
Christopher Wray, you recall when the memo came out in Richmond, Virginia,
Hmm. Yeah.
that within the FBI office in Richmond, where they recommended that the Catholic Church be investigated because they advocate doing the Mass in Latin, the original
Mm.
language of the Catholic Church.
Right.
And right away, they claimed that if they're doing masses in Latin, they must be a domestic terrorist group. And so that nonsense, and it was just nonsense,
Hmm.
not admitting that, short history of the Catholic Church. Obviously it goes back 2,000 years, but the
Hmm.
Catholic Church, the Mass was originally in Latin worldwide
Right.
because it came out of Rome, came out of the Roman Catholic Church, came out of Rome.
Hmm.
And then what happened is over time, country in the 1960s, they had various, they called them ecumenical councils
Hmm.
that met, and they were cardinals or senior officials in the church,
Right.
bishops, that
Hmm.
met and made recommendations to the Pope of things that they saw could make the church better or
Right.
more effective or increase the number of people that became members or parishioners of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the proposals was, these people in these outlying countries that have never heard Latin or even a Romance European-based language, they
Mm-hmm.
might like to be able to do the Mass in their own
Right.
language, whether
Right.
it be Spanish or French or Japanese, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And so they passed a rule then. The Pope agreed, okay, that some of the masses could be in the native language
Right.
spoken in that country.
Right.
Well, what happened then, and I was, a young lad going to Catholic school at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a backlash with many of the adults, many of the older members of the church that said, "Wait a minute, we like Latin. We don't know what they're saying, but it's beautiful. It has a nice sound, and it sounds holy. It sounds patriotic. It sounds a number of things." And they wanted to keep the language that way. So
Mm-hmm.
the churches then could decide, okay, do a couple, do some of the languages in Latin and do some of the languages in the host country. Then
Right.
people could decide if they wanted to go to 8 o'clock Mass on Sunday morning and hear it in Latin, or a 10 o'clock Mass and hear it in Spanish or Japanese or French or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of the ruling of it. So you still have that to this day, where some of the churches do it in the host country language, and some go back to the traditional Latin.
So this
And
is allowed.
huh?
Yeah, this is allowed. So
Yeah. And so
first,
what happens is that the Richmond church does that. They agree that some of their masses will be in Latin.
mm-hmm.
And and then this comes out. This is a big scandal. Oh my God. And the FBI puts out a memo saying basically, if they're doing masses in Latin, they must be a terrorist organization,
Yeah. So
domestic terrorism.
yes. So I'm sorry, I'll interrupt you, Tom. So what is the reason behind they connect the Latin mass with the terrorist group? What is the reason?
Don't
You have
know.
to have a reason
Don't
to
know. And the
say that.
interesting thing was Christopher Wray is asked about it. He's the director of the FBI. He testifies that he was just astounded and shocked and outraged. And so he had ordered an internal investigation to go, investigators to go to Richmond and find out what happened. How come they did this, or get to the bottom of it? So he testifies in the event. The actual memo went out, I believe, in February of that year. And
Mm-hmm.
then he's testifying later, like in June.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he was being questioned by Jim Jordan,
Right.
and telling Jordan that he's ordered an inspection in
Mm-hmm.
Richmond to get to the bottom of this. How did this happen and what? So Jordan asked him in the congressional hearing, when do you think you'll get to the bottom of this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope we know by the end of summer, by
Mm-hmm.
Labor. Well, that would be 10,
2 months.
11 months
Right.
since the accusation was made.
Mm-hmm.
And I commented on other podcasts and other interviews that I did, Ray is lying,
Mm-hmm.
because I had been an inspector.
Right.
On the career path to becoming a senior executive,
Mm-hmm.
at one point you spend time up to a year even as an inspector.
Right.
And a number of internal investigations. The inspection division investigates every single division of the FBI, field offices and headquarters,
Mm-hmm.
and looks at what they're doing and how they're doing it, and are they efficient and effective, and how well is that office performing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when there's an accusation, and as I became a more senior inspector, I was assigned certain internal investigations. And normally, depending on the publicity of
Right.
the accusation,
Right. Right.
um, when Ray says it could take 10 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I just said he's lying, because
Mm-hmm.
something that's received that much publicity, that much negative stuff, that they
Mm-hmm.
would assign an inspector and any
Mm-hmm.
number of assistant inspectors, 1, 2, 10, whatever it took, to
Right.
go to Richmond, interview everybody in that division that might be involved with this, and how did it come about, who decided,
Mm-hmm.
what's the rationale behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
for him, and I said, having done it myself,
Sure.
those investigations internally might take a week or two, maybe.
Hmm.
He's saying well, we might know by the end of summer, and he's saying that in June for accusations that were made back in February. I said he's lying. Does not take 10 months to
Hmm.
investigate something like that.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
so then I even said at the time, let's see what he says
Hmm.
in September, Labor Day, when they should be done. Now,
Right.
I've asked people within the Bureau since, have you heard anything? Have you heard any of the results of that internal investigation? When you sign an inspector to
Hmm.
do an internal investigation, that's pretty serious.
Right.
Not something that's taken lightly by the division or by the
Mhm.
inspector or by the inspection team that goes out. And so for him to say, oh, we're going to get to the bottom, and he assures Congressman Jordan, you'll know as soon as we finish this, we'll tell you what the outcome is. Nothing. Haven't heard anything.
It's
That investigation was supposed to be finished 4 or 5 months ago. Nothing.
still
So
not up to date.
no, nothing. So he
Okay.
just, as you and I've noticed Ray on many occasions just he fits perfectly in the Biden administration because he tells these lies, just
Hmm.
makes up stuff. Oh, we can't talk about that investigation or another because it's internal and it's not finished. Talking about cases that are 3, 4, 5 years old. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
We can get
And
progress reports. We can give up-to-date information of where something stands, or we're still trying to get more information, or we're waiting for evidence to come in from around the world. That
right,
takes time for foreign countries to
right.
do an investigation and send it in to our
Mhm.
people. So that would be a plausible excuse. And I've been involved. I ran international operations my last 5 years in the FBI. I know exactly how long it takes to get information from another country and have it sent back to Washington and get the results analyzed. And so when he makes up these statements, he's not telling the truth.
I just wonder,
You
Tom,
look
why?
at an administration basically by
Mhm.
over and over proving that he lies every day.
Right.
Eric Garland, and then some of these positions, directors of the IRS, directors of other agencies that just lie.
Yeah.
And
Homeland
it's
Security.
unbelievable that they get away with it.
Right.
And
And
now,
I just wonder, Tom, why Jim Jordan follow the case? I don't know if Jim Jordan followed
well,
the
they got
case.
assigned to committees in the House of Representatives that do those kind of look into accusations or look into how the government's operating, or various assignments that go to the committee. You've got Comer's committee, you've got Jordan's committee. Um, so
So
that's
is
where. So they were looking at the internal issues of
uh,
that matter of the Catholic Church.
sure. So my question is Jim Jordan asked him at the hearing. So is
Yeah,
that Jim Jordan's work to follow up the case?
he
The
should. He
Yeah,
could, but we haven't heard any more about it. Now, that also could depend on if Christopher Wray is willing to be asked about it again and willing to testify, or just go hiding and not talk about it. We don't know. We just don't know.
yeah. So
So
that
what the other issue with that is, people are talking normally the director of the FBI, it's a 10-year term. However, the director can be fired for cause. That's what
okay.
Trump did with James Comey. He had
Hmm.
done several breaches of security that
Right.
gave the excuse to get rid of him.
Hmm.
Then Ray gets appointed, and and Ray has told so many lies, and there is plenty of things that
Hmm.
Trump can do to fire him. Now, I've heard some of the Democratic members of Congress saying, "Oh, he's got 10 years, and
Right,
Trump
right.
Trump can't fire him. Trump
Hmm.
can't this. Trump can't." Yes, he can.
Hmm.
And they've got enough uh, accusations against Christopher Wray. They
Hmm.
have they have a multitude
Hmm.
of things that they could get Wray on, basically.
Right. Right. That's good. That's what we need to see. And then, so you mentioned about the first thing that Cash might do is to move the headquarters to some other location.
Well,
And
that won't be. I mean, he's talked about that, but when he's in, we'll see, because those kind of things, the
I,
amount of money that would be involved and everything, Congress would have to approve
mhm,
spending tens of millions of dollars
right.
to move the headquarters office to another, to Omaha, Nebraska, or somewhere else like that. Um, be very difficult. The records that are kept there, the number of officials higher up on the management chain that are assigned there, um, would be more difficult.
Yeah.
We'll
So
see.
what do you
We'll
think
see.
about the idea, Tom? What do you personally think to move the headquarters out of Washington, D.C.? What do you think about this idea? Is it a good
I think
idea?
the problem with that, I don't think so. Looks
Okay.
good, sounds good, but the reason I don't like the idea is because when you get to be an executive at FBI headquarters, certain, level of being an executive, you spend a lot of time
Hmm.
briefing members of Congress, briefing or being briefed by the heads of all of the other agencies in the government that are doing things. You go to, at the time when I was an executive, frequently I went to the State Department and had meetings on the seventh floor there, which is their executive offices with the Secretary of State and senior officials. Frequently went to the Pentagon and had meetings there with officials,
I see.
running military operations around the world. Went
Mhm.
to other agencies, all of the other, major agencies. You need to have close communication with them and
Right.
members of Congress and their staff. And
Right.
my fear is that if the headquarters was that far away, it would be too remote for the FBI to be able to brief and be briefed by other key officials in the
Right.
government.
Right. So this is the key because they need the frequent and close communication with different agencies and then Congress. Yeah,
Right.
I think it's a very, very good point.
And not only that, but the representatives from all of the embassies from around the world. So you have 200 embassies in Washington.
Right.
Many of them have a law enforcement representative or attaché in
Hmm.
that embassy that the FBI has to deal with. And the FBI, I ran the legal attache program of the FBI, which had offices in, at the time, 76 countries around the world outside of the United States. And so those attaches are dealing directly with the heads of law enforcement, Justice Department, other key officials in the countries they were in.
Hmm.
And so and vice versa. So they have key officials here in the United States.
Hmm.
And so I think to assume that having it in Washington automatically causes it to be corrupt or be influenced by politics, well, it's going to be influenced. There's going to be issues like that come up.
Right.
And it's just a matter of it needs the proper oversight, which it doesn't get. And,
Right.
you know, the committees on the Hill should be looking at that. And the funny thing about that is you hear the criticism that, well, the FBI director should not be tied, under the influence of the attorney general or the president or any of that. But then when something goes wrong, how come the president or the attorney general didn't see it? How come they didn't oversee it? So,
Mhm.
so it cuts both ways, whether you have close supervision from senior officials in the government or not.
Right. So your point is the location is not a big issue. The issue is the system. You need to have overseas.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then I heard that he said he probably like to have the agent. They have 7,000 agent to get out of Washington, D.C. to go
Well, they're
local.
not. Well, the problem there is there's not that many agents in Washington or at headquarters. Most
Sure.
of those employees, right now, if you
Hmm.
take the number of FBI employees in Washington, it's
Hmm.
probably close to 20 or 30,000. But out of that, only a couple thousand are actual agents. You have linguists, you have analysts, you have historians, people that keep the records, technicians, the science, the lab, all of those kind. You have the training academy at Quantico that probably has 1,000. So those people are not, uh, they're not all FBI agents. So in
Oh,
fact, probably 10% at the most are FBI agents. The rest are civilian employees of the FBI,
okay.
analysts, technicians, other specialized
Support.
positions that
Sure.
are not agents.
Yeah, wow, this has surprised me. But thank you, Tom, to give me the number. Only 10% are agents. So do
Probably.
you, yeah, so let's see, let's say this is 10%. So we have 90% for the supporting or the other roles in FBI. So what do you think about these people? Can we reduce the 90% of the supporting roles in FBI, or they are definitely a need?
Well, definitely they can be you can look at that and do an analysis of do we need what they're doing?
Hmm.
So, you have language services division, for example, that's
Right,
translating all of the material that comes in from all over the world. So
right.
that's all we need that. And you
Mhm.
look at some other things, science and technology or records management. And the people that control that are looking at different computer systems and analytical systems and everything. Oh, yeah, I guess we need that. So by the time you break down what a lot of these people are doing, you realize it's pretty necessary to have those to operate efficiently. So they're
Right.
not all just wasted positions. And the FBI, in my experience at the time, it was a pretty lean
Mm.
management structure, pretty lean organization.
Mm.
So you didn't have a lot of management and a lot of waste going into that.
Right, right. So that's why FBI is such a great agent because their management is like a lean. It's not like a huge or oversized management. So their efficiency is great. Maybe that is one of the reason of
Well,
FBI.
it was at the time. Now, I had to retire in 2008, so
Right,
so there could be a lot of positions now that have been expanded, and maybe
right,
you could argue that, they don't
right,
really need that or
right,
anything, but it's a global organization,
right.
and we need the relationship with the other countries and
Mhm.
to be able to exchange information, written and oral information and all that. And
Mhm.
that takes unique skills to be able to do that.
Mhm. Yeah, right. So you mentioned that the first thing that he wants to do maybe is a little difficult. So what's the second thing? He said he probably going to change the management, the up level management of FBI, and he mentioned that the problem of the FBI comes from the top management. So he probably going to change the top management team, which I remember you mentioned that in our broadcast. So you guys have the same thought.
Yeah.
So on
I
this
think
part, do you
I
think
think
it's
what he's looking at there are not the fact that those positions exist, but the fact that the individual in the position
Mhm.
um, shouldn't be there or shouldn't be the one that's
uh,
conducting it. So I think that's where a big part of the problem comes in is not the size of headquarters and not the number of executives there, but some of the key positions that are there and who are they working for? What are they following? So in the last couple of years, when you hear, and it's not just coming from the FBI, you have Merrick Garland and Biden, other
right,
senior officials saying, we need the FBI to look at school board meetings. The parents that go to school board meetings are,
right.
are domestic terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those cases, I now live in Loudoun County, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of a lot of those, Fairfax County, where I just used to live, is right next door. But Loudoun is where you had the school board meetings, and people made accusations that the parents were threatening the board, and the FBI needs to look at parents of students as terrorists. They're intimidating the school boards and on like that. So you had that kind of political, let's say, accusations being made, and the FBI being in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you've had cases like that where the attorney general decides, oh, that's a terrorist group, or oh, they're up to no good, and we should investigate them and go after them. And right to life people, anti-abortion people, anybody that spoke out against some policy that was going on,
Mm-hmm.
in many cases got branded a domestic terrorist. Well, not all was not always true, put it that way.
Exactly. So what's the third thing that you think he will do or you think he should do to reform the FBI, to bring FBI, the great FBI back?
Well, I think what if it was me and I was put in that position, I'd want to hear from every division, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Is that
Mhm.
something we need to keep doing? Now, you
Mhm.
have 56 field divisions outside of headquarters, but
Mhm.
at FBI headquarters, you have probably 15 or 20 divisions.
Mhm.
So the divisions, the political pecking order at headquarters is if you're in a division that oversees investigations, that's
Mhm.
what the FBI exists for, Bureau of Investigation. So
Mhm.
you have investigations of national security, you have investigations of criminal matters. You have all these categories of investigations. And then within them, like within criminal division, looking at criminal cases, then you have white collar crime, organized crime, corruption, a
Mhm.
number of categories of crimes that are investigated. And so that in that situation, you need the divisions themselves, starting with the assistant director that runs that division,
Mhm.
justifying what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Mhm.
And those kind of meetings, the director should be sitting in briefings like that where he's learning what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why. Why do we do it?
Mhm.
And so I would start with that those are key things. Then look at who are the personnel that are in those running those divisions or making up members of the division, senior management within the division.
Mhm.
So, compared to a lot of federal agencies, the FBI has very thin executive positions, let's say, within the organization. It's
Sure.
a pretty, they used to refer, it's very lean and mean and
Mhm.
it's not overstuffed with management and all these positions like that, like some agencies are.
Mhm.
So, that could be part of the problem is that people really aren't aware of what it is that's going on and why you're doing it, why we need that work to be done.
Right. Well, sounds like he has a lot of work to do. Need to do,
Well,
need
he
to
probably
do.
has a head start. He was at the Department of Justice and he was, working on the committee with Devin Nunes,
Mhm.
in Washington. So he has he has some background that's pretty solid. He's not like, he just fell off a truck in the middle of Iowa and they brought him to Washington. So,
Right. Exactly.
so I think that, he's gonna have a pretty good head start of what's been going on. And then
Right.
you run into, who funds those programs.
Mhm.
So like the organized crime program, who funds that? Or
Mhm.
the counterterrorism program
Mhm.
or white collar program, the different
Mhm.
specialized programs that are going on,
Mhm.
who supports them? Where do they get their funding? Where do they get the justification
Exactly.
doing those kind of investigations?
Mhm.
So
It's like a follow the money.
yeah,
Yeah. And then yeah, you point out that the positions are not bad. It's only people at the position need to change, like reform. So the purpose, I think, reform FBI or DOJ is to make them great again, make FBI great again, make DOJ great again. So this is the only purpose that I think we need to looking for. So it's a big hope for FBI to get back under cash. So we wish that he can get approved from Senate, which you said you have very good confidence on that.
he's going to have short deadlines to do all this because
Mhm.
you know in a year and a half we'll have another election and every member of Congress has to run again.
Yep.
So we have such a thin margin, the
Hmm.
Republican Party
Hmm.
in the House of Representatives, that depending what happens in the next, basically in about a year, is whether or not the public is going to support the reforms that are going on or the methods that are being done to reform these agencies.
Right.
That's an open question. We'll see.
Yeah. It's a tough question. And the second, thank you so much for the for tell us the FBI and the reform and the obstacles we probably will face. And then this is really good for people to understand how FBI worked. So it's not only criticize or only some other emotion, but we have to face the reality that how it works. And then, so the second question today is about Joe Biden. He pardoned his son. Oh, this is big, big news.
I think that he pardoned himself
Yeah.
by pardoning Hunter Biden because Hunter Biden has been involved in all of this criminal activity on behalf of his father, on behalf of the Biden crime family,
Mhm.
and the pardon goes back 11 years. 11 years ago is
Mhm.
when Hunter Biden takes the job with Joe Biden's backing. Joe Biden was vice president at the time to
Mhm.
get on the board of Burisma and make $1 million a year
Mhm.
operating for a crooked country. I mean, a crooked company in a crooked country, which
Mhm.
Burisma was. And
Mhm.
so, so Biden is like running, my most of my career, I ran organized crime cases.
Mhm.
And, for 5 years, I was the section chief of the organized crime program, worked many of those cases coming up the line from Chicago on to
Mhm.
headquarters. And, Biden runs the family
Mhm.
like a crime family.
Right.
So he's no different than a John Gotti or any of those.
Mhm.
And one of the key things the boss always tried to do is keep the underlings that are doing the dirty work away from him so that he doesn't know everything they're doing. And, he oversees it from afar and tries to keep himself protected from
Mhm.
them testifying against him. And I
Mhm.
think that that's where the issue comes up. Hunter Biden has committed so many crimes.
Right.
He's gotten away with so much
Mhm.
going back to when Joe Biden was vice president. And he
Mhm.
was acting like the front man for the
Mhm.
corruption, the money they got from China and Ukraine, Romania,
Yep.
Russia, you name it. They were taking in millions of dollars uh, in corrupt money.
Mhm.
And so in that situation, Biden was like the point man for all of the crimes being committed on behalf of Joe and on behalf of the family, Joe Biden running the entire criminal enterprise.
Mhm.
The fact that Hunter could testify for weeks and weeks about all of how much money went to Joe Biden, the big guy, how they
Mhm.
did it, how they engineered all of these things,
Mhm.
and that his job, you have Hunter Biden getting on Air Force Two, which is
Mhm.
the vice president's official plane, flying
Mhm.
all over the world
With them.
with him, or in some cases without him, to
Mhm.
broker money that was going to come in to the Biden family. And they got away with it. And so really, the fear is that Hunter could reveal everything. If he
Mhm.
turned on his father, if he, you know, if he didn't feel like his father was protecting him, then he could give up the kingdom. He could ruin all of that. Now we hear all this talk, oh, Joe Biden is so concerned about his legacy. He's not concerned about his legacy. He
No.
figures he can overcome any of the stuff.
Mhm.
And but he's most vulnerable to Hunter if
Mhm.
Hunter turns on him. So if he doesn't take care of Hunter,
Mhm.
Hunter could turn on him, and it would be a disaster, not just for Joe Biden, but
Mhm.
Jill Biden and his brother and other members of the crime
Whole
family.
family.
So
Right.
really, Joe Biden runs this like a mafia family, which is one of my main areas of expertise, studying
Mhm.
organized crime all over the world. And
Mhm.
and Biden, has run that to the maximum benefit of Joe Biden.
So then, Tom, my question is actually on the paper, on the document, he pardoned his son. He did not pardon himself, meaning we can investigate him, right? Is that possible?
Yeah, but there's to no avail if you don't have witnesses who could testify against him. You had, if you recall, back when George Bush was president and Dick Cheney was vice president, um, there was investigations into what Dick Cheney was doing
Mm-hmm.
regarding Iraq and other nefarious things that he did.
Hmm.
And what happened in that case was that his assistant or chief of staff, Scooter Libby,
Hmm.
um, the investigation into what he was doing, Scooter
Hmm.
Libby, and on behalf of Cheney,
Hmm.
revealed a tremendous amount of crime, and they convicted Scooter Libby in that case.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a special prosecutor who at the time was the U.S. attorney from Chicago, Fitzgerald, and he was put in charge of the investigation. And what he was doing was similar to an organized crime. You start at a lower level, you
Mm-hmm.
get that person convicted, then they agree to testify against the next level, the next, and the next. And and so they convict. And Scooter Libby, he lets it know he is not setting foot in jail ever. And so when he gets convicted, Cheney and George W. Bush, they all panic that, oh my God, he has said he's not going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So what do they do? And Fitzgerald is getting all of this evidence lined up to go after Dick Cheney.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is George W. Bush commutes Scooter Libby's sentence, saying, okay, the conviction will stand, but you're never going to spend a day in jail. When
Uh,
that happened, that killed the case. Because then Scooter Libby said, okay, now I don't have to cooperate. I don't have to testify against Dick Cheney or anybody else in the administration.
mm-hmm.
And it came to a screeching halt. And Fitzgerald, the prosecutor, went back to Chicago. And that was the end of the case.
Oh, I see. I see.
So that's
Actually,
kind of how these cases work. So in this case, you have, again, the key figure in the Biden corrupt organization, basically the Biden mafia family. The
mm-hmm.
key is Hunter.
Right,
So they keep Hunter happy, keep him out of jail.
right.
That's it. If he doesn't cooperate, if they're not able to use him,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to get anybody else.
So it seems like the Biden crime family will get away because of the
Yeah,
party.
probably.
Wow, that
Now, don't
sad?
forget, here's another factor in this that nobody's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Hunter Biden has been Joe Biden as president can pardon anybody
Right.
in a federal case.
Mm-hmm.
So Hunter Biden, all of these cases of corruption and everything else he was doing, then the federal government cannot prosecute Hunter going back 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
However, state and
Mm-hmm.
locals can. Biden cannot issue a pardon from state investigation. And you've got
Right.
all of these videos of Hunter having sex with minors, taking drugs, selling drugs, all of the things that he was doing that
Right.
are, yes, they're federal crimes, but they're also state crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Biden cannot stop him or shield him from state. So now
Right.
we'll see what happens. You have a number of state prosecutors uh,
Mm-hmm.
that could
Go.
go after Hunter Biden or Joe for that matter later on. So we'll
Wow.
see how this works out in the long run.
Wow. Great. Thank you so much. So it's not the end yet.
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay. So that's a good point. We'll see. We'll see because if they chasing him, the state chasing him, maybe there's some other information will leak out. We never know. So that's not the end of the case, which is a good news because lots of people are very disappointed of Hunter Biden has been pardoned because he's obviously a criminal. And
Yeah.
then it's not only him, just like you said, it's about Joe Biden and his family. So we'll see. And the last question today is about we have a report from Congress. I think they released the day before yesterday, 557 pages about origin of the COVID-19. So I think this is a huge, this is a big, and they actually prove that the origin of the COVID-19 is most likely from the lab, and most likely is like engineered. And they mentioned Chinese lab, they mentioned NIH, they mentioned Peter Daszak, and everything that we talk about that for 4 years has been called transparency, proved it's not transparency. So I just wonder, what do you think of the next? What American probably going to do next for?
I think
Um,
that I think the question will be if the public
mhm,
and the future leadership of Health and Human Services and NIH and infectious disease and all of that what they want to recommend here, because you have right now, when COVID first broke out, you remember the country regarded Fauci as a saint. Oh my
Yeah.
God, he tells the truth. He's so
Yep.
great. Thank you. And now we find out over the course of investigation, Fauci improperly sent money to China, to the
Mm-hmm.
Wuhan lab, for
Mm-hmm.
gain of function research. And
Yep.
gain of function research means you take a germ,
Mm-hmm.
a virus, let's say, that might just give you a headache or make you, want to lay in bed for 2 weeks or something. Gain of function means now increase the potency of that virus to be fatal, to kill people, not just make them sick, to
Yep.
to to expand its ability to reproduce, to make it more contagious. Those are
Mm-hmm.
functions, how contagious a disease is and how damaging it is to a human body and all of that. So by making it more potent, they're increasing their gain of function. They're
Right.
making it function in a more dangerous way.
Exactly.
And and more of the proof came out. Fauci was providing the money to China, to the Wuhan lab, to do the research to make the virus more fatal in some cases, increase the danger of that particular germ. And of course, he was at the time, he's on every channel and everybody, oh, Fauci's a saint and what could we do? We wouldn't be able to do anything without him and all of that. And we come to find out he's a crook. And
Mm-hmm.
he's one of the highest paid federal government employees, close to a $500,000 a year, $500,000 a year pension, basically, and taking money from Big Pharma. They're
Yep.
paying him and his scientists like a bonus on the side to make him even richer,
Mm-hmm.
and his wife. So, so you have, as evil as the Biden crime family is,
Mm-hmm.
Fauci is running his own crime family within
Mm-hmm.
the health and human services area of the U.S. government.
Right. So you
One
mean that
of the
we,
experts in the country
Mhm.
on the degree of corruptness and evil done by Fauci is Bobby Kennedy Jr. So by Trump putting him in, an overall czar of, the health industry, that's enormous. Now Fauci, they may look at, oh, he's an 85-year-old man, and we can't touch him. Well, there has to come a time when people like that are not untouchable. Just like if he was running a mafia family, the fact that he's 80 or 90 years old, that wouldn't make any difference. He could still go to jail, could still, face the
Right.
death penalty if it called for it. So I think that I think the sainted Fauci is going to be more and more exposed as time goes on now,
Mhm.
like that report that just came out.
Mhm. That's good. That's good. The age is not an excuse. As long as you're over 18, you're adult and you
Yeah.
take the consequence of your action. And
Yeah, and
yeah,
interestingly, that was the excuse with Joe Biden by the special prosecutor that was looking at Biden, saying that, well, he's too old and we wouldn't be able to convict him, and the jury would, realize that he doesn't know what he's doing because he's too old. Well, he's running the country.
yeah,
He's running a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise. He wasn't too old and feeble to do that.
yeah. And remember, Jewish people, like they chasing Nazi when they're over 100 years old.
Yeah.
Remember the story? So I think this is a really good attitude. When you commit a crime, you have to pay the price. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter the age. And I have some audience say hi to Tom and say thank you so much, Tom. Hello, Tom. And I agree with Tom. Christopher Wray fits perfectly in Biden's administration. He tells lies.
Yeah.
And
Over and over. Over and
over and
over.
over. Exactly, over and over. Tom, thanks, Tom. I learned a lot from this program. And love you, two heroes. God bless you and your family. Oh, thank you so much. We have three topics today, very important topic. And then thank you, Tom, for telling us that directly that Biden is not pardoning his son, he's pardoning himself, which
Exactly.
definitely true.
And his brother, his
Right,
wife, other
right,
members of the family. So
right. And then you bring good news to us. It's not end yet. It's
You
not
know, it's
finished.
interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the history books say
Mhm.
5 years, 10 years, even 20 years from now about
Mhm.
the Biden administration,
Right.
that this is probably one of the most inept,
Mhm.
incompetent,
Mhm.
all of the ways they failed the country. And
Right.
on top of that, say that it's one of the most crooked, one of
Oh
the
yeah.
most corrupt family organizations that we've ever had.
Big time, big time. And also about the Congress report of origin of COVID-19. I personally believe this is huge, and we're waiting for that for 4 years, and so many lives lost during the 4 years. And this is the time we get the bottom of the truth, and we will um, do some punishment accordingly. We have to do that.
I think that's what's been missing. They refer to that as accountability would be you do the investigation and people that committed crimes, did the
Right.
wrong thing, get
Right.
held accountable, whether it means they go to jail or pay huge fines or lose their jobs, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
And right now, that's why the Democrats, they don't want accountability. They don't
Mhm.
want any of that. And they refer to it as Trump's going to get revenge on his enemies. Trump's going to have all of these political criminal investigations and everything because they're scared. They know how crooked they've been, for how long they've been crooked.
Mhm.
And they're looking at some point, the public has said, we've had enough. And that's pretty much what they're saying by electing Trump.
Yeah,
We've had enough. We
right.
want somebody to rescue our country
Mhm.
and our culture and our values
Right.
for the right reasons. And it's not just who's got the most power or who you like or you don't like,
Mhm.
that they have committed so many evil acts, especially during the Biden administration,
Mhm.
even separate from the corruption,
Yeah,
uh, that it's time for them to be held accountable.
yeah, I totally agree with you. And thank you so much again, Tom, for your wonderful words. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for watching, and thank you, Cheyenne. I appreciate it.
Sure, I'll do the Chinese version um later today, maybe 2 hours. I'll try to finish that within 2 hours.
Okay,
Thank
yeah,
you.
take your time.
Sure. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week, Tom.
See you next week. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Mhm.